My name is Selena Maddox, and I am a full-time enterprise change executive with various Fortune 500s. My clients span the industries of utilities, resources, high tech, aerospace and defense. And I have a strong passion for what I do, which includes a lot of leadership alignment work, strategic planning, and developing training and communications to bring the entire organization to adopt an enterprise change initiative. And so this is my side hustle called Lead, Live, Learn, and it is really about making more accessible and less expensive, because my company is exceptionally expensive to hire, the subjects of personal leadership and personal development. So over the last 15 years in my professional background, I've found that leaders have to be comfortable with themselves and who they are and their strengths and their areas of improvement in order to be able to affect enterprise change or just the success of any project and the people that they're working with. So this is part 2 of my framework called Lead, Live, Learn, which is the same name as my business. So part 1, and you didn't miss much if you weren't in that course, I will send you the replay and the worksheet. I hope everyone was able to get the card today by email that was sent to you, so you can follow along as we do this interactive session. But in part 1, the course was called Leadership Me, and it was really around the acknowledgement that we all have a choice in how we, 1, show up, 2, respond to, and 3, spend our time. So when we really understand that we have a choice in how we do those things, we can then go into what we're doing today, which is assessing how we're spending our time and understanding how emotionally we are either spending our time in a positive or a negative way. And just by becoming aware of what we are doing and why we are doing it, it can help us make future decisions that may be better and more enjoyable for us as we seek to live intentionally. So thank you so much for being here. Any questions before I dig into the agenda and show you the mural board? All right. All right. Well, so on our agenda today, we've got 52 minutes because it is lunchtime and we need to make sure that we get back to our calls and or whatever else we have on our plates, because I can't be more thankful for you to take this time out with me. We've got our introduction, which I'll just show you in the navigational of the mural board. And then we'll spend 15 minutes on reviewing our personality inputs and the dimensions associated with them. And we'll assess the amount of time we spend and the emotions that are attributed to that time. Then we'll spend 15 minutes on the social inputs, the peers and the networks that we choose to spend our time in. We'll spend 15 minutes on our environmental, our home life, our lifestyle, things that are around us. And then we'll just focus on what we can control, if there is anything we'd like to spend more time on in our own lives as we return back to our day-to-day. We'll close with a poll, and anyone can feel free to come off mute and ask questions at any time. I encourage conversation, and let's dive in. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna I'm sure you're gonna get into this actually, but I was just thinking the 3 steps, showing up and then responding to and spending your time. The responding to aspect. Are we gonna get into that more? Because I'm a little bit curious.
So that's a really good question. And The responding to in my framework is part of the part 3, and that's behaving out in the world, taking action on all of the things that we have assessed. So we can try and bring that into this conversation a bit. I'll take a note of that. But you do want to come to my part 3 for sure.
Cool.
So if you think about the framework itself, my logo is a diamond. So the first part, the leading part, is it's a review of what are the inputs you're bringing in from your personality, your social inputs, and your environmental inputs. And so once you identify what those are, then the second part is to play or live, really understand what makes you feel good, makes you feel bad in those inputs. And then the third part, after you've reviewed all of your options, you're going to react and you're going to respond out into the world. And that is the third piece. The learn voraciously is part 3, and that's going to be August 1st. It's a Tuesday.
Cool.
So what are the types of inputs? The types of inputs, as we've discussed, are personality, social, environmental, and I don't want to disclude if there are others that are in your world that I may not have considered. What does it mean to live your life? Matt said eloquently, it is a choice in how you show up, respond, and spend your time. And that's what we covered as part of pieces of part 1 and will be more in part 3. And then what does it mean to live intentionally? So focus of today, it's about assessment and assessing. Your card companion that was sent via email will create a heat map of colors that reflect the emotions that you can validate. So we'll be assessing that today. Who is Despy? So some of you may know Despy because you may have read my book called 54 Flights. But Despy is really a psychology theory. It stands for despised self. Karen Horney has a theory of the social unconscious where every single one of us has this grandiose image of ourselves. We're the king or the queen of the world. We're the best thing. We are the most athletic. Nobody can beat us. We're the smartest. And then we have the despised self, which is the complete opposite. That's giving us internal negative self-dialogue, criticism, limiting beliefs, telling us we'll never be happy. Anything we do is wrong. If you're a perfectionist, nothing can be good enough. And so somewhere in the middle becomes your real self, and that's the person that you espouse and behave out in the world every day. Some of us, such as like me and Alex in the book's 54 Flights, have a very strong despised self, or Despy, where there's a lot of limiting beliefs. And so I bring this to this group, one, because you can help identify when you're being irrational, and 2, because I have really cute t-shirts on sale on my website that you should buy, and you can go right on it, called Goodbye Despy. And it's basically an acknowledgement of you can't live rent-free in my head anymore. Like, there's no reason for these limiting beliefs. So as we walk through the exercises together, I want you to think about if there's a Despy there. And I had this quote on part 1, and I'm keeping it on part 2, saying, every day is a chance to live the life you want. And And again, it's not the life, it's a life, because sometimes our lives are not as we thought that they would be, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a life that you want. And then on my blog on www.lead.live.learn.com, I also am attributing this quote from Michael E. Gerber, who is the author of The E-Myth, saying, "Great people create their lives actively, proactively, intentionally, making time." The fact that you are making the time to reflect and be introspective of yourself is the only way to have behavior change when you need the behavior change to occur. Yes, Katie.
I have a question. Is the concept that the idealized self is attainable, or that the idealized self leads to the despised self? Like, is it?
It's an amazing question. And Karen Horney, I don't think would ever say that you can attain your idealized self, but I don't think that she thinks that it, like, the ideal self you said that it will counteract the despised
Well,
self?
I think if I try to strive for that idealized self, then it might lead to the despised because it's not attainable, says the perfectionist.
You are a perfectionist, and so am I. So we need to separate the idealized self and the despised self, because they're separate beings as part of us, right? So the work in the despised self is the perfectionism, right? But that which you think is like your idol, your self idol, is probably unattainable, according to Karen Horney. But it can elevate your real self. The less that you allow the limiting beliefs to keep you down, then the way that you live, and that's the point of this, is to elevate the real self. Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of that, like, I guess it's kind of, a matter of what's the end game, right? Is your goal more focused on, being that idealized self, that ideal self, and that's, everything to you? Or is it more the progress aspect of, hey, am I taking these action steps to grow and to become a better self and reflecting? I feel like that's kind of like a balance that you try to strive for, and those are some of the questions we're trying to like attack and learn.
Yeah, definitely. So the answer to the question of what is the end state here, it is to, at minimum, be aware of the emotions attributed to how you spend your time. So in a high level is 60% of your time in a positive, happy, relaxed, calm space, and 40% is worried or scared, or emotions attributed to a negative time. Is it 75%? And so, like, at a macro level, after we review all these details, the goal is that you spend more time of your life in the positive.
That's good.
Okay, so personality inputs. As you think about who you are as a person, there are three main time-bound states. The first is your past, and this includes your nature, what you are naturally, and think about from ever since you were born, what you were naturally gifted at, what your parents told you made you different from your siblings, or made you different from their friends' children. Nurture being that which was disciplined and you were raised to, and your memory recall being what are the actual memories that are you can quickly bring up from your past that kind of exemplify your sense of self, right? Because these are the ones that you always bring up at family reunions, or other people bring up about you from your past that helps create your identity. So when you think about the past, what do you recall about yourself from a nature nurture perspective? And are those memories positive or negative? From the present, you now have a sense of self. Physically, am I coordinated? Am I uncoordinated? Do I look attractive? Am I unattractive? Do I feel weak or do I feel strong? Sense of self emotionally, am I stable? Do I enjoy things? Am I smart? And that goes into the cognitive of, do I have a good memory? Do I think of myself as a smart person that likes to research and spend time with people that are also higher educated? Do I have positive perceptions of my present state of affairs and how I am living and where I'm living? And then from the future, have I set a foundation or a building block that is positioning me for success long term? As I've matured from an adolescent, has that been positive? Have I seen growth in not just physical, but cognitive and spiritual, and anything that allows you to think more critically and understand more empathetically? And then in the future, because I have grown and I've matured, am I able to decide how I capture snapshots of memories moving forward as I go to a family reunion, or as I go into a work meeting, or as I spend time? Am I able to form memories and choose what I'm capturing so that that's what I remember in the future? So when you think about personality, my past, my present, and my future, do I spend most of my time, and this is the first question I'm going to ask you to take notes on for yourself, on a 33%, 33%, do I spend my time evenly thinking about the past, the present, or the future? You've got a total of 100%. And you can now on your companion card, or just on a piece of paper or in your mind, write down some variation that equals up to 100. And I just put in the window mine. Sorry, in the screen. And these are generalized numbers. It's not super scientific, but it is, a balancing act at this current time and space, how you think, you do in general spend your time. I put 20% in the past. I am not a backwards looking person in general. In fact, it's almost a weakness, and it could be something that I could spend more time on, because if you don't want history to repeat itself, you need to be able to reflect more on situations that occurred. I definitely spend about 50% of my time in the present. And then I have more of a tendency to look to the future than the past. But I wouldn't be upset if I started thinking more into the future on certain aspects of my life. But that's my mix. Does anyone want to share their initial take on their percentages?
Yeah, I can go. Can you hear me?
Hey, bro.
Hey, Nina. Mine's very similar to yours. I went 10% past, 65% present, and 25% future. So same kind of categories. I spend very little time on the past. I think it goes to like ownership, and in my mind, leadership. You can't control the past. So in my mind, dwelling on the past doesn't do much. But you brought up an interesting point that actually maybe spending more time on the past can have a better influence on the present and the future. But I'm like you, I rarely think about the past. Also, my memory sucks, so that plays a factor.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Are you arguing that a healthy balance would be 33% in each category? Is that like the ideal state of how to spend your time, or is there not, a percentage that's better than another one?
I can't answer that question because we're each individuals, but the next part of this exercise is going to be evaluating and validating our emotions in each of these dimensions. And if that seems off balance for you, then yes, there needs to be a recalibration.
Got it. Cool.
Anybody else want to share?
Mine were pretty similar, really close to Drew's actually. I had 10% in the past. I had 70% in the present, and for the future, I did 20%.
Okay. Wow. That's a big present-minded focus. That's wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
I can share mine as well.
Great.
For past, I had 15% of the time, and then present 45, and then future was 40. And part of that is because I'm in the process of building my business. So there's a lot more time spent in future.
Right. And that's exciting.
Katie, I was just going to say, Katie, that tells me you have the biggest 401k of anyone on the call.
Perhaps not. I'd put money on Melissa.
Oh yeah. Could be. I'd put it on I don't know.
I only know Selena and Melissa, but Melissa, you're a rock star, so.
Definitely.
What I'm curious, what are we, I lost a little bit there with my air conditioning noise. I heard something about 401ks, and then
We're just
who has the biggest? And I said you.
I don't know about that.
Drew said that he thought that I would have a big one since I'm working on my own business.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I did. This is an interesting, I just texted Katie. I really want to know everyone's percentages because I can't decide. And I'm tempted to say like 50% past and like 30% present and like 20% future. I'm a really past focused person.
Interesting. All right.
Okay, so can I add, okay, Selena, can I add something here?
Yeah.
There is a dimension of extroversion and introversion here because Melissa is an introvert. And when I think of past, present, future, I automatically go to the Myers-Briggs. And that's where I'm like, not surprised at all that Melissa's in past. Because she finds it healthy to inform her. Would it be fair to say that you find it healthy to inform you the past informs what's going on in the present.
There's an ESTJ. Answer the question, Melissa, if you want to. Would you say that?
What, that I find the past informs the future or the present? I mean, yeah, I think so. I
Which
think
is-
that, I mean, I don't know how you, it is so personality dependent, because I don't know how you operate in the present or the future without a sense of the past. And I realize that that is not how everybody lives.
Yes.
I also think there is a potential of, like, I think this is a really interesting exercise, because I think there's a potential of being too much in the past, right? I
Yes.
also think there's a potential of being too much in the future.
Yeah.
And everybody's ideal has to be different, but to me, I feel like the present should have, it's like, I feel like maybe we should all be 50% in the present.
Well, I'm not going to dictate that, but what I am going to dictate is now the next piece. And I'd like everyone to have their companion card open, because I'm going to shade each of these dimensions of each of the input either green. I generally think that when I think of the past and my natural gifts, I think of myself positively. Or I often think positive, but sometimes negative. Or I more often think negative than positive. Or I usually think negative. And those colors are green for positive, yellow for generally positive, but sometimes negative, orange for more negative than positive, and red for negative. And you can go ahead and complete that for all of your personality inputs right now.
Selena, when I originally did this, I was looking at the average, and now that you broke it down into the nature, nurture, memory, recall, like the 3 subcategories, those categories would be very different in terms of what I think of positivity or negativity.
Yeah.
I almost want to have subcategories to like further break it down.
Ooh. We can talk.
Okay.
Sorry, Selena, was there a separate email that had a card?
Patrick, yes. If you go to, I think the email you received was TP Ryan at 11:15 a.m. Eastern. You were sent an editable version of this. Don't feel like you need to, if you're on mobile, if you're not at a computer, if it didn't come through, if you're willing to just jot a couple notes or just listen in, and you can complete it on your own time. Did you check your laptop or your email?
Yeah, I don't see it. Thanks for that input, though.
One more minute, and then we're going to review. when I take a look at how I've assessed my inputs and my emotions, I see that the present and the future are generally positive for me, the way that I think about my opportunities and my sense of self. And then when I look in the past, I have a mix of positive and negative. So for me, that tells me that when I look back, there are many times where I'm not having the best recollection or memory. Looking forward, I have a lot, but I don't look back that often. So I would say, as I think about myself, personality inputs wise, I'm feeling pretty healthy for myself. And I want you to ask yourself, as you look at your personality inputs across the dimensions, how you feel about how you feel.
Question. So the slide you sent us doesn't give the breakdown of nature nurture, but yours does. Like, so that's what I was getting at. Like, you have the breakdown of the 3 under each subcategory. And I like that. That's my feedback.
Well, that's good feedback. It should be in there. It's not, is it within the top cell?
It's, so I see input, the dimension, and then the emotion indicator is like, it's chunked under like past is nature, nurture, memory, recall. It doesn't break down nature like you have.
That is true. That's telling you have to like roll
Average
into one, right?
Yeah.
So maybe a way to actually be able to complete it the same way is to insert 3 boxes, like 3 little squares, like on top of them, like shapes. But I will fix that with the replay. I'm going to send it out so that it looks just like this. Thank you. Any questions before we move to social? Any insights that you gleaned from your personality that you want to share? None? All right. So the next set of inputs include our social inputs. Across those are 3 dimensions of family, peers, and your work or your career, how you spend your time as a stay-at-home mom or in the workforce or stay-at-home dad. From family, you want to think about the rewards, the punishments, and your family's messages to you. And that can be your nuclear family. It can be your extended family or your chosen family. There are either consciously or subconsciously rewarded behaviors that have been threaded throughout the family's history. On our part 1, we reviewed together and separately what those were, and we listed out some of those rewards, punishments, and ultimately overarching statements or messages. But how much time do we spend with family in relation to our overall social network? Peers, similarly, these can be your friends from high school, college, elementary school, graduate school, peers in the workforce, anyone you deem a peer at the board level. They also have a cultural norm in terms of rewards, punishments, and messages to you that help inform you what is rewarded, what is punished, and who I am in relation to that social network. What amount of time do you spend with your peer group? And finally, as part of your social inputs, are your work and career. What has gotten you promoted? What has allowed you to stay or makes you want to leave? What is being punished that doesn't align with your value system? And what is important? What are the messages that your work gives you? All of this matters because they subconsciously, that the amount of time you spend in each of these areas really influences your output. So if you can understand how much influence you are being given across these, it can help you decide if that's the right level of influence and those are the right messages for you, or you want to spend more. You've been missing one area in your life and you want to build up more, such as for me, my extended family, I would say, is an area that I want to spend more time in, because as I see some of them aging, I'm realizing that life on this planet is much more limited now. So how can I keep the legacy of my family alive? Well, the best way to do that is to spend more time. But I would say right now, it's 40%, but that's only 40% because of my nuclear family, not my extended family. So if I were to do all family, I would say it'd be 30%. Peers, 25%. And more time in work than with family. Did that equal? Yeah. So it matters how you define family. It matters how you define your peer groups and your work and career. But I'm curious, is anybody perfectly balanced?
I have a question.
Yeah.
As far as like the percentages goes, like for me, because like I spend a fair amount of time, at work or doing work, but I might not spend, like, I do more like reports and things like that. And I have like one-on-ones with my managers and stuff like that. And I do collaborate with peers, but like I don't spend as much time with like peers. So thinking of this like socially, I'm just trying to think through, like, am I thinking like the time I spend at work or more this time I spend at work interacting with others?
Mm-hmm. I would say interacting with others. Yeah.
Okay.
These are really good questions. I'm gonna update the companion card.
I also have a thought about spending time with others. I'm thinking particularly my family that lives, in a completely different state than I do.
Yes.
And it's challenging to spend time with them. I mean, we do, FaceTime calls over the weekend and stuff like that. But for me, I'd say my extended family that lives far away, it's hard to spend the amount of time I would prefer to be with. I would love to see them more. I'd love to have family dinners. And, I think distance for me makes it a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And kudos to you, Claire, for doing the weekend FaceTimes, because that is an avenue that's available to us. And honestly, that's part of my own internal work right now, is I know I want that number to increase to 40 or higher. And part of the way that I can do that is through FaceTime or WhatsApp. And it's a matter of a behavior change for me, is just pressing send on the phone, even if I'm tired, even if I don't know exactly what I'm going to say or have, we don't have an event scheduled because we live far away. And so we honestly don't know the next time we're going to be able to get together. Some of my family in North Carolina, I think there's opportunity for building a bigger bond, even though it's just virtually. So thank you for bringing up that, but physical distance does play a part.
And I would almost say that the pandemic aided us in having more time together. It started with like, hey, we can't get together for Christmas. Let's like video everyone in and open presents together. And then it was like, well, why aren't we doing this all the time? And it became a more routine thing. So I've actually enjoyed that.
Thank you. So now, yes.
I was just gonna say, mine's totally lopsided on peers. So I've got 45% family, 45% work career, and then 10% peers. And I think that's more a function of just the season of life with little kids. So much of time is spent on career and dad, and so little time is spent on just peer group, peer interaction. So
definitely. And seasons of life will alter this every 5 years. It's going to look different. But the point is that okay for you? Are you filled with, did you say 10%?
Yeah, that's what I put, 10%.
Wow, that's low. That's really low. It's one of the ways I feel like 25% is low for me, because I'm a social butterfly that absolutely loves spending time. Like Claire and I are like trying to figure out when we're going to go to the winery Cooper Hawk tomorrow. Like we got to make it happen. But there's also this thing where now that I'm spending time with family so much, that when I go to Puerto Rico with them, or if I go to a vacation with them, I'm getting these postcards. I get 4, and I send them to 4 of my bridesmaids anywhere I go. And I get them back too from them. So like, that's a way for me to feel like I'm still connected, even though the social aspect is not even there. So it's like little things that can keep those relationships alive, even when your season of life doesn't allow the physical time for it. But again, as we go into this now, Drew, if you're green with the rewards that 10% are giving you, that there's no real, like, I talk to this friend and I feel like I'm always going to be in a bad mood after I talk to this friend because they're victims, or they're they're complaining all the time. Like, if that's not an issue, then that 10% is balanced for you in this season of life. There's no right or wrong answer.
I only feel that way after talking to my little brother, but everyone else is.
Yeah, because you beat him in tennis every single day. And
I wish. No, that makes sense.
Selena, true to form, I'm going to bring back my grad school self and bring up another theory. So this is really reminding me of the wheel of life with balance that we talked about with Peter DiGiamarino. I put a link into the Mind Tools, but it's the way where it's like, it's not, balance doesn't look like 10 out of 10 for everybody. Like, you don't need a 10 out of 10 on everything. And so that just really reminded me of that. If you scroll down, you can see it. And it's kind of like, maybe you could put it where you adapt it into your green, orange, method, but that's sort of where it was. Like, maybe you're good with partner being at a 3 or 5 or whatever, 6.
Yeah. I thought about Peter DiGiamarino's strategy class a lot as I've been forming my my framework. So that's amazing that you brought that up. That's really amazing. I wasn't even thinking about this particular one. But yeah. So I'm going to do a quick assessment here. And then I'm going to ask you guys to just listen in as I quickly review the environmental inputs. I should make this a little bit longer of a session, I think, moving forward. And I'd love your feedback too on what you think the right amount of time is in the survey at the end. But we're going to need to close this up pretty quickly. From an environmental inputs perspective, you do have other networks, your religious, your volunteer, any continuing education or primary education places that you go to. How much time do you spend outside of your family, outside of your work, giving and or taking from these networks? The information and research question is, what do you read? Do you read the newspaper? What newspaper do you read? Do you contribute to local politics, national or international politics? Do you consider yourself a researcher or a scientist, and you spend a lot of time in general researching? And what is it that you are researching, and how does that information benefit you or make you crazy, make you paranoid? You know, when you have a medical issue in the family, you know, are you the one that gets into all of the details so you can get the best remediation and handle the doctors and ask the pointed questions to make sure that they're fulfilling their part of the bargain? And does that help you because you're helping someone else? Does it hurt you because then it opens up the floodgates for other gaps or rocks that you're turning over? You know, how much time are you spending in the research category? And then environmentally at home, and how you live. Have you set up your home in a way visually that's attractive to you, in a place that you want to spend your time? Or are you leaving things all over the place and then find yourself anxious and anxiety ridden because it's not in order? And so it makes you feel out of control. And then maintenance, are you maintaining your body and your life? Are you maintaining your home? Are you maintaining your assets, your car? You know, how big is maintenance to you right now? And how important should it be to make sure that you don't have to buy, you know, a new toy every month because the toys that you're buying are so cheap, made in China, that it ends up being that you lose them and need to continuously buy? Or lastly, your energy. Are you able to conserve it so that when you need it the most, you can give it that burst that it needs? You know, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And do you have energy? Do you have high energy? Do you have low energy? Do you need to find more? And have you been contributing to, you know, walking and running or doing exercise that allows you to have energy? Do you drink too much coffee like me in order to manage the 2 little ones under the age of 3.5. Think about how much time you are doing self-care, and home and lifestyle is all about self-care. Right now, for me, it's a big part of my life to try and manage myself and manage my home. I'm spending most of my environmental inputs on the home and my management of my energy. And I am in very much learning of how to conserve energy and work smarter, not harder, the way that I used to. So I'm going to give myself
Selena, can you kind of go into what education means when you're like, what is that looking like?
Yeah, it looks like any continuing education courses that you take, or it's more formal education opportunities as outside of your normal network.
Does that mean like reading a book, or are you like, do you know what I mean? Like, does
I
it
would
have to
say
be formal? Because it's like, okay,
I would say that reading a book is more in the information and research part.
so would it be fair to say like, okay, I'm the kind of person where it's like, okay, I shouldn't be getting every certification I want to get. So in some ways, education could be a negative, because even though I want to do more of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're assessing how we feel about the time we're spending
On it. Okay, so it's not what you're actually doing, it's your evaluation of whatever you're at. Okay.
And
understood.
that can either
Thank you.
help you make changes to how much time, if
Okay.
it's a lack of time, or if it's the messages and the topics and the subjects that you are working through. I put a link to the survey for today's in the chat, and I would really appreciate it if each of you can go in there quickly. It's really quick, and fill that out. You can do it on your phone as well. It's in the chat. And then I'd love to hear from the group your initial insights to this entire session across your personality, across your social, and across your environmental inputs on the time you've spent, the time you'd like to spend. And I'd love to hear if anyone wants to share one action they're going to take, one action you can take to spend more time in a more positive way.